Welcome back to podcast EduTalk, a podcast by Dinh, an educator from Georgia. Today's episode is part of the book review series, and in this episode, we will review the book The Dream Keepers by Gloria Larson Billings. And I have with me in the studio two guests from Deep Dive. So let's hear their conversation about this book, The Dream Keepers.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take your sources, dig in, and pull out the key insights for you.
Great to be here.
So today we're tackling something really central to education, I think. How do we really help all students, especially diverse learners, not just, pass tests, but actually become critical thinkers?
Thinkers who can engage with and shape their world, yeah.
Exactly. And we're going to explore this through two really interesting lenses you provided. First, Gloria Ladson Billings' classic work, The Dream Keepers.
A foundational text, absolutely. Successful teachers of African-American children.
Right. And then we'll connect that to this idea of the deliberative curricularist. Sounds intriguing.
It is. It offers a different way to think about curriculum itself.
Okay, let's get into it. The Dream Keepers, first published, 1994?
That's right, though it's now in its third edition from 2022.
So why revisit it now in 2025? Seems like it stood the test of time.
It really has. It introduced culturally relevant pedagogy CRP, and honestly, it's still so relevant for understanding how to close those opportunity gaps that persist.
And it's not just about African-American students, is it? The principles seem broader.
Definitely. The insights resonate across all sorts of diverse groups. We see connections in, say, majority Hispanic schools, places with growing multilingual populations.
Yeah.
The core ideas travel.
So what are those core ideas? You mentioned culturally relevant pedagogy, CRP. What's that built on?
Well, Ladson Billings identifies three sort of key pillars or outcomes you see with successful teachers using this approach.
Okay.
First, ensuring academic success. That's non-negotiable. Second, fostering cultural competence, helping students understand and value their own culture and the cultures of others.
Right. That cultural piece is crucial.
And third, developing what she calls sociopolitical consciousness. So the ability to critically analyze, societal inequalities and think about change.
Academic success, cultural competence, sociopolitical consciousness. Got it. And these aren't just theories.
No, not at all. They're things you can actually see happening in classrooms where teachers are really succeeding with diverse students. Observable outcomes.
Let's dig into some of the specifics from the book then. What really stands out? I know it starts with a pretty challenging question.
It does, right at the beginning. Is there a case for separate schools? And it's important to understand she wasn't arguing for segregation.
No, of course not.
But she was surfacing this real frustration, this growing disaffection, as she put it, among African-American parents. They felt public schools were often ignoring their kids' cultural strengths.
So the point wasn't just about physical integration.
Exactly. It was about curricular belonging. If the curriculum doesn't reflect you, doesn't value your background, then just being in the building isn't enough. It's a kind of intellectual segregation in a way.
Wow, that really reframes it. Curricular belonging.
It does. It shifts the focus.
And how did she see teachers achieving that belonging? She talks about culturally relevant teaching. How does that differ from, say, a more traditional approach?
Well, she drew on anthropological work and highlighted some key mindset shifts, like responsibility. In a traditional model, the teacher feels like they own all the responsibility for learning.
Right, the pressure's all on them.
But with culturally relevant teachers, that responsibility is shared with the students. It's collaborative.
Okay.
And the metaphor she uses. The traditional teacher is like a solo performer up on stage. The cultural relevant teacher is more like a conductor or maybe a coach.
Guiding the orchestra, not playing every instrument.
Exactly. Striving for excellence together.
I like that. Did she give examples of this? You mentioned vignettes.
Oh, absolutely. The book is rich with them. She paints these pictures of teachers who see themselves almost as artists. Teaching isn't just delivering content, it's creative work.
And connected to the community, right?
Yes, very much so. Viewing teaching as giving back to the community. That was a common thread. And they actively help students connect their own local identity to, national and global identities.
Which is so different from deficit views, focusing on what kids supposedly lack.
Worlds apart. And this philosophy shaped the whole classroom environment.
How so? Like the physical setup?
Both physical and social. Effective CRP relies on creating democratic dialogic spaces. Think communal writing centers, peer tutoring, structures that might mirror cultural norms, like call and response in some African American communities, rather than just silent individual work in rows.
So the how of learning reflects the who.
Precisely. The environment itself becomes part of the pedagogy.
And what about the knowledge itself? How is that viewed?
It's not seen as this fixed thing handed down from on high. Knowledge is presented as something constructed, dynamic, deeply connected to students' lived experiences.
So teachers would go beyond the standard curriculum.
Absolutely. They might integrate local civil rights history, for example, connecting the textbook content to the student's own community reality. That achieves both academic rigor and cultural relevance.
That makes learning much more meaningful, I imagine.
It empowers students. They're not just receiving knowledge, they're actively building it, making sense of it in their world.
The book highlights specific teachers, doesn't it? Powell, Winters, Butler.
Yes, and through them, she shows these ideas in action. Like with literacy, she contrasts approaches. Maybe one teacher uses traditional basal readers, another uses culturally specific read-alouds.
And the takeaway isn't that one material is inherently better.
Exactly. Both could lead to literate students because the teacher's mindset and approach, how they use the materials, how they connected with students, that was the crucial variable. The mindset transcends the specific tool.
That's powerful. So it's less about the perfect resource and more about the teacher's lens.
Right. A similar thing with math, using manipulative, sure, but connecting them to real-world context, like budgeting for something in their neighborhood, making it relevant.
So looking ahead from when she first wrote this, Ladson-Billings was calling for policy changes.
Yeah, she wanted policies that actually recognized and valued cultural competence and sociopolitical consciousness as legitimate markers of educational success, not just test scores.
And have we seen that happen? You mentioned ESA, the Every Student Succeeds Act.
Well, ESA does call for evidence-based, culturally responsive strategies. So, in a way, it echoes her vision nearly 30 years later.
Yeah.
But the implementation, it's still pretty uneven, honestly, still lags behind the vision in many places.
Okay, so the Dream Keepers clearly provides this really strong foundation, these three pillars. But, ideas evolve. How has the conversation around CRP developed since then? Are there critiques or extensions?
That's a great question. And yes, definitely. Well, the core ideas remain incredibly powerful. If you look at the early chapters especially, they were written before intersectionality became such a central part of the discourse.
So thinking about how race intersects with gender, disability, language.
Exact. Those aspects needed and have received fuller treatment in subsequent work. Also, the whole policy environment is just vastly different now than in the early 90s.
Especially with ESSA, like you said, but also things like the anti-CRT legislation we've seen in some states.
Right. That creates a really complex, sometimes hostile landscape for teachers trying to do this work. They might need different kinds of support, different advocacy tools today to navigate that.
That makes sense. So how does Ladson-Billings' work connect with other major ideas in the field? Does it stand alone, or is it part of a bigger conversation?
Oh, it's definitely part of a bigger conversation. It aligns strongly with Gloria Gay's work on culturally responsive curriculum design, for instance.
Okay.
And it's also been extended into what Django Paris and Sammy Allen call culturally sustaining pedagogies.
Sustaining. How is that different from relevant?
The emphasis shifts slightly. It's not just about leveraging student cultures to teach traditional content, but actively nurturing and sustaining those cultures as valuable assets in their own right. Seeing culture as something to be grown, not just used as a bridge.
I see. So it's an evolution of the concept.
The building upon, yeah.
Okay, this is fascinating. Now let's bring in that other concept from the sources, the deliberative curricularist. How does that fit into this picture of creating meaningful, responsive education?
Right, the deliberative curricularist. It's a different angle, focusing more on the process of curriculum development itself.
So not just the content, but how we decide what to teach and how.
Exactly. The idea is that a deliberative curricularist sees curriculum not as a fixed script you just deliver, but as a practical art. It's about responding thoughtfully, ethically, to real problems that come up in the classroom and the community.
Okay, a practical art. So less rigid than just following a manual.
Much less rigid. Think of someone who follows a fixed framework as a systematizer. The deliberator, by contrast, uses reflection, negotiation, and constant adjustment. They're focused on solving problems that emerge from the specific context, the students, the community.
What are the core values there?
Flexibility is key. Also, moral reasoning, thinking about the ethical dimensions of what's taught. Innovation. and, crucially, responsiveness to student needs and the local context.
Can you give an example? How would that look different in practice?
Okay, imagine teaching, say, a unit on local ecosystems. A systematizer might stick strictly to the textbook chapters and the district pacing guide.
Standard approach.
Right. A deliberative curricularist, though, might see an opportunity. Maybe there's a local environmental issue, a debate about development, or pollution in a nearby river.
Ah, so they'd connect it to the real world.
Yes. They might design a cross-curricular project around it.
Yeah.
Students could research the science, sure, but also the history, the economics, maybe interview local stakeholders, write letters.
So it becomes much more inquiry-based, problem-focused.
Exactly. It moves beyond just delivering content towards critically engaging with authentic problems. It often involves group work, different ways of showing learning, exploring multiple perspectives. It's building the curriculum with the students, driven by real-world questions.
And you mentioned moral reasoning. How does that play into it?
That's central. The source we looked at, Null, I believe, emphasizes that deliberation is the best way to connect knowledge and ethics. You don't just teach about virtues like courage or compassion.
You practice them.
You practice them through the process, through working together, grappling with complex issues, considering different viewpoints. The curriculum itself becomes a space for cultivating moral character, not just transferring information.
So the goal isn't just academic achievement, but something broader.
Yes, the goal is framed more holistically, maybe even as happiness, the flourishing of individuals in the community, which brings in things like social-emotional learning, SEL, right into the heart of curriculum planning.
Okay, this is really interesting. Now, bring it back for me. How does this deliberative curricularist stance connect with Ladson Billings and the Dreamkeepers? Do they align?
They align beautifully, I think. Gladstone Billings really complements this, especially when she talks about knowledge construction.
How so?
Remember how she described culturally responsive teachers, empowering students to co-construct knowledge, not just passively receive it?
Right, validating their backgrounds, making them active thinkers.
That is deliberation in action within the classroom. It's fundamentally about how and why things are taught and for whom. It's that dynamic, responsive process where the curriculum emerges from the interaction between the teacher, the students, and the context. It's not just about the what.
Got it. So the Dreamkeepers teachers were, in a sense, acting as deliberative curricularists, even if they didn't use that term.
You could certainly see it that way. They weren't just following scripts. They were constantly adapting, responding, co-creating the learning experience based on their students' needs and cultural backgrounds.
What seems really appealing about this deliberative stance is the balance it strikes.
Yes, that's a key point. It doesn't ignore standards or institutional requirements. It acknowledges them.
But it doesn't let them dictate everything.
Exactly. It finds the space within those structures for responsiveness, for context, for student needs. It blends structure with flexibility, content with lived experience.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground, from CRP's pillars to this idea of curriculum as a practical, deliberative art. Let's bring it home for the listener. What does all this mean for you, potentially for your own practice or understanding of education?
Right, the so what question. Well, these ideas have pretty concrete implications at different levels.
Like policy.
Yeah, on a policy level, things like ESSA Title II funds could potentially support professional development in culturally relevant pedagogy. Or you might look at state regulations. Georgia was mentioned in the source, urging culturally inclusive practices.
Okay, and at the district level.
Districts often have equity plans. These ideas, especially CRP, offer a tangible pedagogical approach to actually act on those plans. For instance, by mandating reviews of disaggregated data and then providing CRP as a strategy to address disparities.
Makes sense. And then in the actual classroom, what moves might a teacher make?
Oh, lots of things. Maybe using restorative circles for classroom management, having students research and write their own community histories, using different kinds of assessments, like single-point rubrics that evaluate critical thinking alongside the standard content goals.
And connecting with families and community.
Absolutely crucial. Mirroring what those Dreamkeeper teachers did, really immersing themselves in the neighborhood. That could mean community walks, maybe co-teaching lessons with local elders or experts, truly bringing the community into the school.
It sounds like a much more integrated approach.
It is. It breaks down those walls between school and community.
So wrapping up this deep dive, it really feels like the core message is that education is about more than test prep.
Much more. It's about keeping dreams alive, as Ladson Billings puts it. Dreams of justice, of joy, of intellectual power.
Yeah. So, building on all this, maybe a final thought or challenge for you listening. Take a look at one lesson, one meeting, one interaction you're part of this week.
Ask yourself, does it really honor cultural assets? Does it push students or colleagues towards thinking critically about the world, that socio-political consciousness?
Does it empower people to build knowledge together, to engage ethically? And if the answer is, maybe not fully,
Then let these ideas from the Dreamkeepers and the deliberative stance be a starting point for thinking about what your next steps could be.
excellent. That's a powerful place to leave it. Thanks for digging into this with me.
My pleasure. Really rich material.
Thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see you again in the next episode on EduTalk. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.